Welcome, everyone, to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we talk about spiritual subject matters and how to bring them into our lived realities and apply them practically. I'm here with co-host Achyuta Gopi and tri-host Layal Garanga. How are you two doing today?
Co-host goes first.
Co-host.
We're good. We're good. We're good.
How about you, Dayal?
It's not good.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just joking. I'm good. I'm good. Good enough.
Good enough. That's a good
That's
answer.
I mean, that's basically that's what we're all aiming for in some ways. It's good enough.
Good enough. I'm also good. I'm good enough. Also,
I think our audience is getting slowly more depressed.
they're getting
They're,
concerned for us.
they're getting concerned. Like, wait a minute. Somebody told me that this podcast was gonna lift me up and give me hope, and we're like, I made it through another day yesterday. I woke up this morning. That's a good sign.
I'm now sitting here like the topic of today. I was like, what happened to us? Are we okay?
What
Like,
happened to us?
everything all
Yeah,
right?
the sequel. It went from This Is Us to What Happened to Us.
Ha ha.
Oh, gosh.
January 1st, we started this podcast. Woo, we're going to talk about spiritual life and all our stuff. And then it's like July 1st, we're like, we still doing this?
Oh, God.
What have we done?
What are we talking about today? Can one of you please fill us in? Because I don't think I'm going to get it right.
Yesterday, well, we've been this week theme a lot about acceptance, withholding judgment, and then it flowed into the idea of also there are principles in spiritual life, principles of life in general, principles of morality, principles of behavior, standards of how we interact with other people. I mean, and it's so interesting that in the Gita you get so many guidelines just of how to treat other people. You know, earlier this year, um, I was in India and we're doing a retreat with somebody, and they spent like a week or two going to like holy places, and at the end, one of the comments was, this is the standards of how human beings should treat each other." And it wasn't just like, oh, being in India and being at holy places in India. It was just the way that they saw yogis and spiritual people that were guiding the trip. They're like, this just feels like the standard of behavior of how humans should treat each other, the way that there was just communication and care, etc. And so, whether it's in a spiritual community or not, there's an ideal of how we behave and act in life. And that can be encouraging. When we speak about those principles, it can be encouraging and inspiring. And at the same time, when we don't live up to those principles, or we come face to face with our shortcomings, it can also be isolating and create shame, etc. And so we talked about, keeping principles, but upholding principles without holding judgment towards other people, and that little dance and that maturity of not just getting rid of principles, but at the same time finding acceptance and finding and never withholding love. So that's where we kind of went the last 2 days.
And I remember my takeaway from yesterday was kind of that idea of upholding the principles and understanding that I may have missteps or misjudgments or even mistakes, but I don't have to give into the shame spiral in either direction. The shame spiral that takes me down the road of, oh my God, I'm such a failure. Nor do I have to give into the shame spiral that takes me toward the direction of, and I'm never opening myself up and doing this again. There's this constant dance in life of being vulnerable again. There's this constant dance of life of, even in spirituality, of showing up again, almost doing the same things again, which can feel like the definition of madness, doing the same things, hoping for a different result. but the intention is different. There's an intention of, okay, I'm going to stick with it. And I remember speaking maybe about this here before, that the idea of, within Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about equanimity during happiness and distress. And I was thinking maybe that has less to do with us being detached from it, so detached that we feel nothing. And maybe it has more to do with continuing to show up through both of them, continuing to be vulnerable through both happiness and distress, continuing to rededicate ourselves to doing the work that it takes to connect and to really form those bonds through happiness and distress.
Somebody take a timestamp of that, Kishore. Make sure Brudge gets that on our next video clip. That's an important one.
It's a good one.
That's a really good one. I'm gonna keep barreling through, Kishore. Sorry, but I was just thinking that I love that you brought that up in the Gita, in the equanimity, equipoise, and happiness and distress, because I think it's such a big one, and I think it's one that gets misunderstood a lot. When we say be detached from happiness and distress, and it kind of comes across as this stoic mentality of like, you don't feel anything, don't be happy, and don't be sad. When something good happens, don't get too crazy about it. When something bad happens, just brush it off and don't feel anything. And I agree. I don't think that that's the message. I think the message is you're going to feel a whole bunch of stuff in life. You know, Pasha put in the chat, shame is a very tricky emotion. You're not going to escape it. You're going to feel shame. You're going to feel elation. You're going to feel sadness. You're going to feel worry. You're going to feel insecurity. You're going to feel all of those things. And there's nothing you can do to get rid of them, but to be equipoised through them, to not let them therefore dictate your choices and cause you to do things that you would otherwise not do if not overwhelmed by that emotion. That's steady intelligence. I believe Krishna referring to the to in the Gita as buddhi yoga, as using the intelligence of discernment to know, okay, my shame is telling me this, my sadness and depression is telling me this, my excitement and my giddiness over this is telling me this, and I hear that, but I'm not necessarily going to let that be the dictating voice in my life. I'm going to have an equanimity that searches and digs a little bit deeper for that inner voice of my soul, the inner voice of my Paramatma, my inner guide. And I really, really appreciate that. As a man who lives by his emotions, I appreciate the reminder.
I think it's also really interesting because not only will we have all of these emotions in life, and they'll be intense, I think shame really starts to come from a place where we think that we need to have negative emotion. We either need to hide them, or that we're lesser than for having them. And I think the ultimate thing that it boils down to is feeling that we are alone, that I'm unlovable. I'm unlovable because I'm going through this negative time in my life, or I'm having these negative emotions. And not only am I unlovable by my friends and family or like whatever, but I think that the biggest height that gets to is I'm unlovable by God. I'm unlovable by Krishna. And I start to really believe that and go into that shame spiral. And then it gets really messy because we start to just, dig those things away, not feel them, not address them, not address the things that are going on with me. And we've talked about this so much. Then we'll tend to kind of like really stick to those regulations or principles almost to a fault, in a sense of like, look, Dad, I'm doing everything the way that you want me to do it. Like, I'm being perfect. Here I am. But it's like all of this stuff internally is still going on, of the negative emotions, of the feelings of, distress and sadness, and et cetera, and blah, blah, blah. And so I really like this point that you guys are bringing up, because it's not don't feel the distress, or you're a bad person for feeling distressed or frustrated or depressed or like whatever, it's like, how can I feel this but still have, a sense of purpose while I'm going through this, as opposed to feeling alone and feeling abandoned.
Pasha calls me dad.
Yeah. I think what's amazing about what you were saying is that it applies so incredibly to Krishna consciousness. How many times do we feel such shame and desolation just saying, you know, I had a hard time chanting? How many times do we actually have those conversations, even with others or with ourselves, where we actively sit there and go, okay, you know, I've had a hard time chanting. I think maybe I need some help. Instead, it's like, if you have a hard time chanting, don't tell anybody. If you've been struggling with anything, don't like just don't tell anybody. You just fake it till you make it, and you don't tell anybody. Because if you rip that cover off, everybody is just waiting to take advantage of you, God included. It almost feels like God is just waiting to take advantage of this moment and be like, aha, see, I knew it. And we go into this mindset of everything is going to be too good to be true.
Mm.
But it also doesn't spur us toward creating a long lasting, sustainable, spiritual or material life practice. Nothing works for very long through shame and guilt and the judgment and even fear.
Mm.
And that's what I love about Bhakti Yoga. Yes, there are hellish planets and hellish conditions. And it's like, that's okay. Yeah, there's a working in the universe. Fine. Let's move beyond that now. Let's get beyond that. Let's find out what the motivations are. Here are the motivations. We stop, like, there's, you know, fifth canto, right? Like you get this section, and then it's like, and we're moving on. And not only are we moving on from a section that talks about all of these hellish conditions, but now we're going to move on to a whole entire section of Srimad Bhagavatam where people are going to make the mistakes that we just told you should get you sent to these hellish conditions. And we're going to keep reminding you that God's going to save you anyway. We're going to keep reminding you that God's going to rework the universe, even though you're going to make those mistakes that we just told you should send you to the most hellish conditions of life. But still, God's going to say, but you know what? You had a different intention. So, okay. And that is so amazing, because the shame and the fear and the guilt it doesn't work, doesn't make for a long lasting situation. And we need something long lasting.
Mm. I've been getting into this musical group called Maverick City Music. Have you heard of them? Um, but they're really really great, and it's a Christian group, and it's kind of like modern day gospel, and just really good music. And I first noticed them because they do a lot of work in prisons, and just like watching some of their live videos just in prisons and singing, it's just like really really moving. Anyways, they wrote one of their more recent songs, a song called Jireh, which is interesting because Jireh is a name for God in the Old Testament. Which, when you think about, like, you know, who's God, like who's Krishna? Well, Krishna's God. Well, I don't believe in the different names of God, but it's like, how many of us, the word God, God, was never mentioned in the Bible. Like, there was names of Jehovah and Yahweh, or Jireh. Jireh means you will provide. And so there's this name of a song called Jireh, and the lyrics, I just think, I was just because I was just listening to this song yesterday, and the lyrics I put in the chat here, and I was just thinking of them. It says, I'll never be more loved than I am right now. You're talking about being unlovable. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I can do to let you down. It doesn't take a trophy to make you proud. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Going through a storm, but I won't go down. I hear your voice, carried in the rhythm of the wind to call me out. You would cross an ocean so I wouldn't drown. You've never been closer than you are right now. And so I love this kind of this idea, this feeling of like, I'm not going to make myself worthy of love. It's not like I'm not loved right now, but at some point, once I pass through the obstacle course, I'm gonna reach this point of like being loved. But it's like I'm loved right now, and um, there's no sense of like missing the mark that therefore makes me unlovable. So I like that you made that point, Kishore, and I think that it's sort of, it's really, really important for us to remind ourselves of that, because if we don't, then it becomes, we kind of lose our juice or lose our inspiration to kind of keep going, because we think it's just like, otherwise I'm just tired. I'm just tired. You were talking, Achita, about whether it's making mistakes or whether it's about not being able to perform my sadhana and spiritual practices. It just becomes like a grind of just like this like never ending boot camp of like getting through all my daily stuff, as opposed to like, wait a second, like I'm actually loved right now. I'm actually like cherished. I'm actually like held and being encouraged, and there's a higher spirit that is rooting for me, and just wants the best for me, you know? And so it's like all of this stuff of like how to live life, it's not to prove my worthiness or to get love. It's just, this is just how to live a happier, better life. Like all the stuff I've been trying before, all the like the let loose, do if it feels good, do it, like hasn't worked for anybody. It hasn't worked for the planet. Like we haven't gotten ourselves to a great place. You know, gas prices are still going up. You know, so like there's something not working. um and so I think it's really for us to know, it's like, I'm already loved, I'm already cherished, I'm already connected, and these are just things that will just help me experience more of that love and live a better, more fulfilling, freer life. So I just wanted to share the song Jaira, J-A-R-J-I-J-I. Go, just go type, just speak it into Google, just speak it into Google. Jireh.
And I think that it's important to note everything that you just said, Doyle, and that's why one of the important things is like, it's like there are no medals. There are no medals for how much you suffer. And then conversely, even on the good side, it's like you said, you know, Kishore, it's like, but I'm doing everything right. Like, don't you see me? Don't you? It's like there are no medals. It's like, but why? Even when I'm doing the good things, why are there no? It's like, because you don't get it. It's not that I didn't love you. It was I wasn't sitting here putting all these things in place to say I will love you if. That was already there. There are no medals because this is about our own spiritual rehabilitation. And so all the things that we think we're doing for the acceptance of love, it's already there. Like you said, it's already there, and that's why there are no medals.
Ganesh wrote a quote from H.D. Goswami: if you know that you are infinitely loved, that the greatest conscious being thinks very highly of you, no matter what, then you won't feel bad. Thinks very highly of me.
Yeah,
That's because he doesn't know the real me.
I think that's the consciousness that it seems, you know, it seems so beautiful and simple, and at the same time it's a journey to get there, you know, because it's like, yeah, I know that God loves me, or I can know that in a logical sense, like you know, I can hear it, but really going through that journey of like really believing it on a super internal level, like that's such a personal journey for each and every person. And I just remember at the beginning of this week, I think we were talking about this at the beginning of this week, about how, you know, sometimes playing back the bad things in your life, and just going through the bad stuff and like talking about all the bad things and like where could I have made a different turn, you know, like why didn't it work out? And I was talking about this psychologist that I kind of follow, and she's really poignant in how she discusses things. And she was like, rather than talking about all of the stuff from the past, it's like, why don't we focus with right now? You know, like how is your body doing right now? How is your heart doing right now? And that just came up for me because hearing both of you speak, it's like, yeah, God loves you right now. And he never didn't love you. And it was never a test, and it was never a contest, and it was never like, you know, putting you through the hamster wheel of life for you to figure it out, And so maybe a question I have for both of you is how, if it's that simple, why is it so hard?
Because we don't believe it.
Mm,
Because we don't believe it.
mm,
I think that I was talking with someone the other day, um, and they were going through something, and they gave me a call, and they were struggling, and I was just like, so much that we feel lost and we feel confused in life, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, what do you want, or what do you need right now? And they're like, I don't know. I was like, well, we can't do anything till you start there. And it was like, so much we feel, we get in this tizzy of like, I've got to do this or that, or I'm worrying about so many things. And it's like, you have an empowered way of living your life of like, nothing is more important than just making sure you're taking care of yourself right now. And so to just pause and to actually like even close your eyes if you need to, take a few deep breaths and just like notice what you're feeling. And like, you don't even have to name it, just let it just like almost kind of like primordial, like, what do you want, primeval, just like
Primal.
primal feeling just like come up, and just like, because feelings don't have names. We give them names: happy, sad, depressed. It's just a feeling. Just like if you poke your arm, that's just a sensation in your arm, and then we say, okay, that's sharp or that's painful, etc. So similarly, feelings have that. And just like, what are you feeling? And then like, what do I need in light of that? you know and then to ask myself like, how can I give that? And it's, I mean, even in my own life, I've been periods of life where I've surprised myself, where it's like the consistent feeling I'll have through periods of my time is like, I'm scared, I'm lonely, I'm disconnected. And it's just like, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't, like, why? And I'm like, oh. And you try to come up with a reason for it and justify it, be like, well, I shouldn't feel that because I can't think of a conscious reason. It's like, no, like, on a deep level, like, and I think that's what a lot of us go through a lot of the times. And then it's like, I think I need to find something outside of myself to fill that, rather than just thinking like, actually, can I just pause for a moment, recognize that I'm feeling that, and then like remind myself that I actually don't need something outside of myself to fill that up. But it's not intellectual, And so I'm sitting there being like, I'm not lonely. I'm connected to my eternal soul. And I'm just like, it's not working, because it's not something that is mental or intellectual. It's something that is cultivated over time. And so I think that it's something we have to believe in, and something that we have to cultivate, like love in a relationship. Like, you don't just fall in love with somebody. That's like, you can fall in love for a minute or two or three, and then you fall out of love. I don't love you anymore. It's like, well, because you never loved them in the first place. You just had this sensation of giddiness, around them, because you thought they were cute or fun to be around. But it's like, when we think of love, it's like, oh, I can't love you right now, because love takes a long time to really develop and nurture, and you invest in it. So I don't know if that related to what I originally said, but those are some thoughts that I was going off on. But I think the original point is that I think that it's so hard because we don't really believe it, and we doubt whether God actually loves us or that we're loved. And it creates a lot of those feelings and sensations.
I agree. I was talking to a friend recently, and I was telling them something, and and I finally, I was like, you're not hearing me. And they're like, no, I hear you. For some reason, I just can't accept it.
Hmm.
Krishna keeps telling us the same things. And we're like, yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
Hmm.
I haven't accepted it. And I feel like that still goes back to the work of opening up and being vulnerable. If I open up and I allow this to come in and try and heal me, the disappointment, if it doesn't work, will be so much greater. There is nothing more disappointing than like hope. And we start off at a place where we are bereft of hope. And then I feel like life is a series of gathering hope and then being disappointed by the hope that we've gathered, because we're putting our hope in so many different places and things. When that hope is frustrated, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says hope is such a dangerous and fickle thing, because when that hope is frustrated, then it's like we start to lose our minds over it.
Mm.
And so even with our spiritual lives, yeah, I hear you. I don't know if I accept it, because if I open my heart up and accept that and then it all goes wrong,
Mm.
how do I come back from that? How do I claw myself back from that?
I'm going to read one more thing, and we got to go, I think, Kishore, right? We got like a 9:30 sharp appointment. Anyways, I'm going to read, this is the end of the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse 72, just a few verses from the very last verse of the Gita. When Krishna is done speaking everything, he says, "O son of Prithvi," speaking to Arjuna, "O conqueror of wealth," meaning you've conquered everything materially, but spiritually you've found yourself bereft. "Have you heard this with an attentive mind, and are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled?" He's like, I've shared with you everything, but did it really sink in? And then Prabhupada says in the purport so beautifully, he says, Krishna was acting as a spiritual master of Arjuna, therefore it was his duty to acquire from Arjuna whether he understood the whole Bhagavad Gita in its proper perspective. If not, Krishna was ready to re-explain any point or the whole Bhagavad Gita if so required. Meaning it's like, you can hear it once, but you need to hear it again and again until you believe it, until it sinks in, until it makes sense, until like it's genuine. And so I think so much of spiritual life is getting to the point of simply believing that we're loved. It's simply just believing in love. And so even Krishna mentioned that to Arjuna at the very end. He's like, I told you everything, but did it go in? Like, are you transformed? If not, I'll do it again. Like, I got time. I got nothing but time for you, buddy. Yeah. Which is not what we have, because we are out of time. And Kishore and I got to run.
We are fresh out of time, but we will take our takeaways from Kimberly before we run.
So today we're taking away to continue to show up and be vulnerable through both happiness and distress. Nothing works for a very long time. Nothing works for very long through shame, guilt, and fear. And we are already loved, cherished, and connected exactly where we are right now. We just got to keep hearing that until we believe it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for your takeaways. Thank you to the live studio audience, Martha and Dinesha, Lane and Lileshwari. The whole gang is here today. Lexi, Irenka, Sydney, Rachna, Pasha, Anna. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Chitagopi and Dayal. We will see you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you all. Have a good one.